I gave my sister my kidney, then she broke me at her wedding. Ever wonder what it feels like to save someone's life, only to have them stab you in the back? That's exactly what happened to Lila. She gave her kidney to save her sister Sophia. But instead of gratitude, she got mockery and humiliation at Sophia's own wedding. A wedding where Lila worked herself to exhaustion, her surgical scars barely healed, all while her sister treated her like dirt. But there's more to this story than just a selfish sister. It's about parents who were blind to years of manipulation, about a wedding day that exposed decades of family secrets, and about what happens when the perfect facade finally cracks. Watch as Sophia's carefully crafted world comes crashing down when the truth about Lila's sacrifice comes to light. This isn't just another family drama. It's a story that will make you question everything you think you know about sibling rivalry, parental love, and what it truly means to be family. By the end, you'll see how one person's act of kindness becomes the catalyst that shatters a lifetime of lies. If this story resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe to hear more incredible stories like this one, and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the strongest. New videos every week that'll make you think, feel, and maybe even see your own family in a different light. Let's dive into Lila's story. I stood back from the elegant centerpiece, my fingers still tingling from tying the last satin ribbon. The flowers were a perfect blend of whites and soft pinks, just like everything else at Sophia's wedding had to be flawless. A small sigh escaped my lips as I thought about the past 6 months, every minute consumed by wedding preparations. Each tiny detail, from the exact shade of blush in the table runners to the precise angle of the napkin folds, had been carefully selected and generously funded by our parents. They treated Sophia like their precious diamond, meant to shine brightest on her special day. And me? I was the invisible glue holding everything together, making sure no detail slipped through the cracks. "Lila!" My mother's sharp voice shattered my moment of peace. I turned to see her storming across the reception hall, her face pinched with worry and frustration. "The seating cards! Why aren't they done? You know how crucial they are." I kept my voice gentle, though exhaustion made it difficult. "They're already placed on the tables, Mom. I finished them an hour ago." Her momentary confusion quickly transformed into another demand. "Well, don't just stand there. Sophia needs you. Go check on her dress." As I climbed the grand staircase to my sister's suite, my feet protesting with each step, I pushed aside my weariness. Today wasn't about me. It never was. The door creaked open to reveal Sophia perched at her vanity, her golden curls cascading perfectly down her back. Her reflection caught mine, and that familiar smirk appeared on her face. "Finally! What kept you?" The impatience in her voice was as sharp as ever. Without a word, I knelt beside her to adjust the stunning wedding gown that surrounded her like a white cloud. The dress was a masterpiece, custom designed, hand-beaded, and worth more than my yearly salary. It was just another example of how our parents spared no expense for Sophia, just as they always had. While she grew up with designer clothes and expensive hobbies, I inherited the role of family caretaker and eternal second best. "Watch the lace!" Sophia's voice cracked through the air as I adjusted the hem. "This dress costs more than that old car you drive." I swallowed the hurt, knowing from years of experience that defending myself would only make things worse. Sophia had mastered the art of turning every situation to her advantage, casting me as the jealous sister in her carefully crafted narrative. When we were young, not sharing my toys made me selfish. Not cheering loud enough at her recitals made me unsupportive. And our parents always took her side, enchanted by her version of events. "You're unusually quiet," Sophia observed, studying me through narrowed eyes. "I hope you're not sulking on my wedding day." I quickly plastered on a smile, the muscles in my face straining with the effort. "Of course not. I'm happy for you." She settled back in her chair, satisfied with my response. "Good. It's nice to see you being useful for once." The added elements emphasize the deeper emotional currents, elaborate on the history between the sisters, and provide more vivid sensory details to help readers connect with the scene. I've maintained the original tension while adding layers to the family dynamics and the protagonist's inner struggle. I nodded mechanically, forcing down the familiar taste of resentment. This wasn't the moment to unleash years of buried feelings, not on her wedding day. As I adjusted her veil one final time, a quiet thought crept in. Would I ever stand in the spotlight of my own story, or was I destined to be forever stage crew in someone else's? The memory of that night 2 months ago washed over me suddenly, vivid and raw. I was in my small bedroom, folding endless piles of laundry when I heard it, a knock so gentle I almost missed it. It wasn't Sophia's usual imperious rap, demanding attention. When I opened the door, I barely recognized my sister. Gone was her perfectly crafted image. Instead, she looked fragile, almost ghost-like, her eyes red and swollen, her hands shaking against my doorframe. "Can I come in?" The words were barely a whisper, so unlike her usual commanding tone. I moved aside, watching as she perched uncertainly on my bed, her fingers twisting together in her lap. The silence felt heavy, wrong. Sophia was many things, but never quiet, never unsure. This version of her sent chills down my spine. "What's wrong?" I asked from my desk chair, trying to keep my voice steady despite the growing unease in my chest. She stared at her hands, her manicured nails leaving crescent marks in her palms. When she finally looked up, tears spilled down her cheeks, shattering her perfect makeup. "I need your help," she choked out. 3 words I'd never heard from Sophia before. She didn't ask for help. She commanded. She expected. She took. But she never asked. Never like this. With what? I tried to keep my voice neutral, though my heart was racing. She drew in a shaky breath that seemed to rattle her whole body. "I'm sick," she whispered. "Really sick." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What do you mean, sick?" Her next words came out in a rush, as if she couldn't bear to hold them in anymore. "I have kidney failure. The doctors," she swallowed hard. "They say I need a transplant. Soon. I don't have much time." The revelation hung in the air between us like a physical thing. My mind struggled to process it. My invincible sister, the golden child, was failing? "I don't understand," I said slowly, though a terrible understanding was already dawning. "Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes met mine, and I saw something I'd never seen in them before. Raw fear. "Because you're my only hope," she whispered. "You're my sister, Lila. You're a match." My stomach clenched as the pieces fell into place. Before I could speak, she rushed on, words tumbling out in desperate waves. "I know you hate me," she said, her voice rising. "I know I've been horrible to you, and I don't deserve anything from you, but please," her voice cracked, "I don't want to die." Hate was too strong a word. I resented how she manipulated situations, how she painted me as the villain in every story. But hate? No. Despite everything, she was still my sister. And now she sat before me, stripped of her usual armor, pleading for her life. "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked, searching for another solution. "They're not matches," she cut in quickly. "I've checked. You're the only one." Her voice cracked on the last word. I studied her face, trying to reconcile this broken version of Sophia with the sister who had spent years undermining me at every turn. "Why haven't you told anyone else? Mom and Dad should know about this." She hugged herself, suddenly looking very young. "I can't let them see me like this. Not yet." Her eyes met mine, swimming with tears. "You can hate me forever after this. But please, Lila, don't let me die." The weight of her request pressed down on me like a physical thing. She held all the cards. If I refused, I'd carry the guilt of my sister's death forever. If I agreed, I'd be risking my own health for someone who had never shown me real kindness. But could I live with myself if I walked away? I ran my fingers through my hair, exhausted by the choice before me. "Okay," I whispered, the word feeling heavy on my tongue. "I'll do it." "Really?" Her face lit up with desperate hope. "Yes, I'll get tested." The words came out steady, even as anxiety twisted my stomach into knots. She whispered a tearful, "Thank you," as she left, leaving me alone with my churning thoughts. The emotions swirled inside me: fear of the surgery, resentment at being cornered into this decision, and a tiny spark of hope that maybe this sacrifice would bridge the gulf between us. Maybe this would be our turning point. I kept the secret, telling neither Mom nor Dad. This was between sisters. I didn't need their well-meaning interference or inevitable misunderstanding. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that this selfless act would somehow make everything right. But standing here at her wedding, watching her perfect day unfold, I realized how wrong I'd been. "Lila, you look absolutely dreadful." Sophia's sharp words cut through my thoughts. "We're taking photos soon. You can't go around looking like you just rolled out of bed. You'll ruin everything." I swallowed hard, biting back words that threatened to spill out. How could I explain that every movement sent pain shooting through my still healing body? That my surgical incisions were barely healed? That I'd been running myself ragged, making her day perfect while my body screamed for rest? I smoothed my dress and mumbled an apology, though it hardly mattered. Sophia would always find ways to make me feel insignificant. The afternoon became a blur of endless tasks: directing the photographer, triple-checking place cards, even emergency fixing a bridesmaid's torn dress hem with trembling hands. Through it all, Sophia's voice followed me like a shadow. "You better not be slacking off," she called as I brought her water. "This is my special day, Lila. Try not to mess it up." I nodded and smiled mechanically, while inside, a bitter question burned. Did she even remember what I'd sacrificed for her to have this day? By the time guests filled the reception hall, my body was in full revolt. Each step sent waves of dizziness through me. The bright lights pierced my eyes, and faces in the crowd melted together like a watercolor painting. I found myself pressed into a corner, desperately gripping a tray of champagne, trying to stay upright while the room spun slowly around me. Sophia glowed in the center of it all, twirling with her new husband, radiating joy. Occasionally she'd catch my eye and smirk, as if to say, "Know your place." When our parents passed by, she called out, "Lila, stop hiding in corners and make yourself useful. And stop looking so pale. You're being dramatic." She wasn't wrong about how I looked. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead, and black spots danced at the edges of my vision. I set down the tray with shaking hands, grabbing the table's edge for support. A caterer noticed my distress. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. "Fine," I lied through clenched teeth. "Just need to catch my breath." But my body had other plans. The room tilted sharply, sound fading into a distant roar. I tried to take a step and felt my knees give way. The floor rushed up to meet me, and suddenly I was looking at the ceiling while concerned faces swam above me. The music screeched to a halt. A circle of guests formed around me, but instead of help, my mother's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Lila, what are you thinking?" she snarled, crouching beside me. "Get up this instant! You're making a scene!" "I'm sorry," I whispered, my chest heaving as I fought for air. The pain in my head was blinding now, splitting me apart from the inside. "Sorry isn't enough," my father's voice boomed from above, his shadow falling across my face. "You've completely ruined Sophia's perfect reception." Hot tears blurred my vision as I tried to push myself up, but my body felt like lead. Words of explanation died in my throat, crushed under the weight of exhaustion and defeat. "Of course," Sophia's voice cut through the whispers, sharp as glass. You just couldn't let me have one day, could you? Had to make it all about you. The unfairness of her words knocked the breath from my lungs. After everything, the surgery, the recovery, the endless preparations, after giving her part of my body so she could live, this was how she saw me? This isn't for attention, I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. I just don't feel well. Maybe you should have thought about that before making a spectacle of yourself, she sneered, flipping her perfect hair. God, you're so pathetic. I let the tears fall freely now, past caring who saw them. All these years of trying to earn their love, of bending over backward to please them, and for what? Lying here on the reception hall floor, I finally understood. Nothing would ever be enough. A man stepped forward from the crowd, one of the guests, a doctor. She needs medical attention, he said with quiet authority. We need to check her vitals and get her some air. My parents helped me to a nearby chair, their movements stiff with reluctance and shame. Through my haze, I caught Sophia's reflection in a mirror. She was leaning into her new husband, rolling her eyes and whispering, her face twisted with anger as if my medical emergency was a personal insult. I sank into the chair, trying to shut out the world. Every part of me hurt, not just my healing body, but deeper, in places no doctor could reach. This wasn't just physical exhaustion catching up with me. This was years of being treated like I was nothing, of giving everything and receiving nothing in return. For the first time, I wondered if some wounds never truly heal. The car ride to the hospital swam in and out of focus. I pressed my forehead against the cool window, each bump in the road sending jolts of pain through my body. My parents sat in stony silence up front, broken only by my mother's irritated sighs. Next to me, Sophia's wedding dress rustled with her angry movements, a constant reminder of her presence. I can't believe this, she muttered, venom dripping from every word. You've ruined everything. We had to delay the ceremony because of you. I didn't respond, focusing instead on taking shallow breaths that wouldn't disturb my aching side. By the time we pulled up to the emergency room, the spinning had stopped, but the bone-deep exhaustion remained. The hospital staff eased me into a wheelchair, wheeling me away from my family. As I lay on the examination table, feeling oddly detached, a nurse checked my vitals before calling the doctor. When the door opened, I saw a familiar face, Dr. Patel, the surgeon who'd taken my kidney just months ago. His usual warm smile vanished when he saw my condition. Lila, he said softly, you're pushing yourself far too hard. This isn't good for your recovery. I tried to smile. I'm okay. But he wasn't having it. Collapsing at a wedding isn't okay. Without another word, he strode into the waiting room. Through the thin walls, I could hear his measured voice addressing my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Turner? Yes, that's us, my father replied curtly. I'm Dr. Patel. I performed Lila's surgery a few months ago. My mother's confused voice cut in. Surgery? What surgery? Dr. Patel paused, and I could picture him gathering his thoughts. Lila donated one of her kidneys to save Sophia's life. The silence that followed felt endless. Then my father's stunned voice. What did you say? She never told you? Dr. Patel sounded genuinely surprised. She made an incredibly selfless choice, without asking for any recognition. My mother's voice shook. Lila gave Sophia a kidney? Yes, Dr. Patel confirmed. She went through extensive testing and major surgery. That's why she collapsed today. Her body is still healing. That's impossible, my father protested. Sophia told us the kidney came from a donor registry. Dr. Patel's voice remained steady. The registry matched her with Lila. She was the perfect match. The revelations settled over them like a heavy blanket. She saved Sophia's life, my mother whispered, and we never knew. Yes, Dr. Patel's voice hardened slightly. And right now, she needs rest and support, not criticism. Through the window, I watched their faces transform as Dr. Patel returned to my room. For the first time, I saw real guilt in their eyes, the sudden, crushing realization of how badly they'd misjudged me. Later, I woke up in a hospital room, my body still aching, but my mind clearer. My parents sat by the window, but they looked like different people. Mom's usual sharp edges had softened, her face pale and drawn. Dad, always so rigid and commanding, seemed to have collapsed in on himself. "Lila," Mom's voice broke as she spoke. "Thank goodness you're awake." I tried to push myself up, wincing at the effort. Dad appeared instantly at my side, adjusting the bed. Their concern felt surreal, like a dream I might wake from at any moment. "We're so sorry," Mom choked out through tears. "We had no idea. Dr. Patel explained everything." "Why didn't you tell us about the kidney donation?" Dad's voice quivered. "Would it have mattered?" The words came out hollow, empty. Mom jerked back as if I'd slapped her. "Of course it would have. We would have supported you, thanked you." "Supported me?" My voice rose. "Like you've supported me my whole life? By believing every lie Sophia ever told about me?" Dad's face went slack, his mouth working soundlessly. Mom whispered, "We thought you two just didn't get along." Didn't get along? The dam inside me burst, years of pain flooding out. "Is that what you call it? Let me refresh your memory." I drew a shaky breath, anger giving me strength. "Remember when I was 6 and Sophia broke your crystal vase? She blamed me, and you grounded me for a week." "She told us," Mom started. "I never touched it," I cut in. "She pushed me into the table, but you believed her because she cried first." "Lila, please," Dad tried to interrupt. "Or how about in middle school? When she accused me of stealing from your wallet? I begged you to believe me, but you didn't even question her version." "That's not fair," Mom protested weakly, tears streaming. "We didn't know." "Exactly." My voice cracked with the weight of decades. "You never knew because you never asked. You just believed her. Every single time. And I kept forgiving you, hoping someday you'd see the real me." They sat frozen, finally seeing the magnitude of their failure. I turned to Dad, my voice steadier now. "You always said I was too sensitive. It was easier to dismiss my pain than admit Sophia was manipulative. But this?" I gestured at my hospital bed. "This isn't sensitivity. This is my body breaking down because I gave up an organ to save her, and you didn't even notice." Dad crumpled, his face buried in his hands. Mom reached for me, but I pulled away. "Let me ask you something," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. "If Dr. Patel hadn't told you the truth, would you have ever cared enough to see me? Really see me?" "We were wrong," Mom whispered, but the words came far too late. "About everything," Mom continued. "About Sophia. About you. We failed you completely, and I don't know how to fix it." I looked at her through my own tears. "You can't," I whispered. "Not completely." "We'll make this right," Dad said with sudden determination. "How?" Bitterness crept into my voice. "By pretending the last 25 years never happened? By ignoring how Sophia poisoned you against me?" "We'll confront her," Mom declared, desperation edging her words. "She needs to face consequences for how she's treated you. We'll tell her husband the truth. We'll cut her off if we have to." I studied her face, searching for any hint of deception. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes, real understanding. "Why now?" I asked softly. "Why believe me after all this time?" "Because we finally see you, Lila." Dad's voice cracked. "And we're devastated it took us this long." Their regret seemed real, but trust wasn't something I could give easily anymore. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said firmly. I need time, and I need you to prove you mean this. We will. Mom squeezed my hand. Whatever it takes. As they left to confront Sophia, I released a shaky breath. A tiny spark of hope flickered in my chest, not just for myself, but for a future where I wasn't the invisible sister. But I needed more than promises. For now, being seen was enough. My parents marched toward Sophia, who sat absorbed in her phone. She glanced up with perfectly practiced concern. Mom? Dad? What's wrong? Her head tilted innocently, the performance so flawless it made my stomach turn. We need to talk. Now. Dad's voice could have cut glass. Sophia blinked, thrown by his tone. Okay, what's going on? You need to explain yourself. Mom's voice trembled with rage. We know everything about the kidney. About Lila. Fear flashed across Sophia's face before her mask slipped back into place. She forced a confused smile. What do you mean? Don't lie, Dad growled. Dr. Patel told us Lila gave you her kidney, and she kept quiet because you begged her to. Sophia's mouth opened and closed before she laughed nervously. I mean, sure, Lila helped me, but why are you making such a big deal? I didn't force her. You begged her. Mom's tears flowed freely now. You manipulated her, and then had the nerve to humiliate her at your own wedding after she saved your life. Sophia rolled her eyes and crossed her arms, looking more like a defensive teenager than the polished bride she'd been hours earlier. Everyone's being so dramatic, so she fainted. That's not my fault. It was my wedding day. Her voice carried a whine she couldn't quite hide. Her father leaned forward, his wedding toast, champagne forgotten on the table. Your wedding day, he said, each word sharp as ice, where you worked your sister to exhaustion, humiliated her in front of 200 guests, and laughed when she collapsed. The same sister who was still recovering from major surgery she underwent to save your life. Sophia fidgeted with her diamond bracelet, her perfect manicure catching the light. What was I supposed to do? Announce to everyone that I needed my little sister's kidney to survive? That would have ruined everything. She paused, then added more quietly, people expect things from me. Her mother's teacup clattered against its saucer. Expect things? Like basic human decency? Gratitude? The older woman's hands shook. We raised you better than this. You've been lying about Lila for years, haven't you? Her father's voice had gone dangerously quiet. The missing jewelry you said she stole. The car scratch you blamed on her. The family heirloom you claimed she broke. With each example, Sophia seemed to shrink smaller. Tears smeared her perfect makeup. I just wanted you to be proud of me. Her mother's laugh was hollow. Proud? I can barely look at you right now. Of course, Sophia's voice rose shrilly. Saint Lila, the perfect daughter. You don't see how she makes me feel small just by existing. She never made you feel small, her mother cut in. You did that to yourself. The door opened, and Daniel, still in his wedding tuxedo, stepped in. He took in the scene, his new wife's tear-stained face, his in-laws' rigid postures. What's happening? Sophia's father turned to him, and something in his expression made Daniel step back. Did you know about Lila's kidney? About how your wife made her sister swear to hide it, then spent today treating her like dirt? Dad, please. Real fear crept into Sophia's voice. Daniel doesn't need to... Kidney? Daniel's eyes widened. What kidney? Sophia's mother stood, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. 6 months ago, Lila donated her kidney to save Sophia's life. And today your new wife rewarded that sacrifice by working her recovering sister to exhaustion, then mocking her when she collapsed at the reception. Daniel staggered back as if physically struck, his eyes fixed on Sophia. Tell me this isn't true, he whispered. But Sophia's frantic head-shaking and desperate protestations only made her look more guilty. Lila wanted to help me. I never forced her, she cried. her voice rising with panic. "Stop lying!" Her father's voice thundered through the room, making everyone flinch. Daniel's face had turned ashen as realization dawned. "All those stories you told me about Lila being jealous, about her trying to sabotage you." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up its careful styling. "You were the manipulator all along." Sophia lunged forward, grabbing his sleeve with manicured fingers. "Please, Daniel, I can explain everything." But he jerked away as if her touch burned. "Explain what, Sophia? How you convinced your sister to give you her kidney and then treated her like dirt. How you've been lying to me since the day we met." His voice cracked with hurt and betrayal. "I love you," Sophia sobbed, mascara running down her cheeks. The perfect bride was now a mess, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. Daniel just shook his head, his wedding ring catching the light as he turned away. "If you can lie about this, you can lie about anything. I can't do this." Without another glance, he walked out, leaving Sophia reaching for empty air. Her parents' faces were carved from stone as they delivered their final verdict. "We're done, Sophia," her father said, each word heavy with finality. "No more enabling your lies. No more excuses. You're on your own." They left her there, collapsed in her wedding dress, her sobs echoing through the empty room. Later that night, I stood in my bedroom, staring at my packed suitcases. They looked small considering they contained my entire life. The decision to leave felt both terrifying and right, like standing on the edge of a cliff knowing you have wings. "Are you sure about this, sweetie?" My mom's voice was gentle now, so different from the sharp tones I'd grown used to over the years. She hovered in the doorway, uncertainty written across her face. "We can work this out. You don't have to go." I met her eyes, feeling stronger than I had in years. "I appreciate the apology, Mom, but I need space to find myself, away from all of this." The words felt right, even as they hurt. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "We were so wrong, Lila. So terribly wrong." My father appeared behind her, his usual commanding presence softened by regret. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready." That first night in my new apartment was a study in contrasts. The place was tiny and imperfect, water stains on the ceiling, a window that whistled with every breeze, and wallpaper that had seen better days. But sitting on my second-hand couch, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of my new neighborhood, I felt something I hadn't in years: freedom. As I began my job search the next morning, I wasn't just looking for employment, I was looking for my identity. For the first time, I wasn't Sophia's little sister or the family disappointment. I was just Lila, and I was ready to discover exactly who that person could be. Starting over was harder than I imagined. I spent hours updating my dusty resume, trying to make my limited experience sound impressive. Each rejection email felt like a personal judgment, but I kept applying everywhere. Retail stores, offices, anywhere that might give me a chance. I refused to let my sister's voice in my head tell me I wasn't good enough. Then finally, after what felt like endless applications, I got an interview at Redline Design Studio. It wasn't a glamorous position, just an administrative assistant role, but when I walked through their doors, something felt different. My new boss, Carla, was unlike anyone I'd ever met. She burst with creative energy and actually noticed when I reorganized their chaotic filing system or found better ways to schedule client meetings. "You know, Lila," she said one morning, sliding a steaming latte across my desk, "I see something special in you. The way you think about problems, how you handle clients. Stick with us, and you could really go somewhere." Her words awakened something in me that had been dormant for years: ambition. I started spending my evenings learning Adobe Creative Suite, watching tutorials until my eyes burned. Every new skill I mastered felt like a small victory, a step further away from being just Sophia's sister. Life began changing in other ways too. Maya from the accounting department invited me to lunch one day, And suddenly I had a friend who knew nothing about my past, who liked me just for being me. Through her, I met other people. Genuine, kind people who never made me feel like I was competing for attention or affection. My parents kept trying to reach me. Their voicemails became a regular part of my life, each one heavy with remorse. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. Just thinking about you." Or, "Lila, Dad here. Hope you're doing well." They never pushed, never demanded. Just gentle reminders that they were there, waiting. Months passed, and I slowly became someone I barely recognized, someone stronger, more confident. My tiny apartment started feeling like home, decorated with my own artwork and filled with design books. I was learning who Lila was without the weight of family expectations. One evening, while I was sketching concepts for my first real design project, Carla had finally trusted me with a small client. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. "Saw a beautiful sunset today and thought of you. You always noticed beautiful things. We're so proud of who you're becoming. Here if you need anything. Love you." I traced my fingers over the words, remembering all the sunsets I'd watched alone, thinking I wasn't good enough. After a long moment, I typed back, "Thank you. The sunset was beautiful here too." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall I'd built. The healing started slowly, like a plant gradually turning towards sunlight. My parents kept reaching out with small gestures, a birthday card here, a gentle text there. They never pushed, never demanded, just offered consistent reminders that they were trying to change, and slowly, I began to believe them. The coffee shop felt too bright, too public for such a private moment. I spotted my parents immediately, Mom fidgeting with her cup sleeve, Dad repeatedly checking his watch. When they saw me, their faces lit up with a mixture of joy and fear, like they were afraid I might disappear. "Lila," Dad half rose from his chair, his arms twitching with an aborted hug. I gave him a small nod and slid into the seat across from them, grateful for the table between us. The silence stretched until Mom broke it, her voice wobbling. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, her hands wrapped tight around her untouched coffee. "The way we let Sophia manipulate us, the way we treated you." She trailed off, blinking rapidly. Dad picked up where she left off, his usual confident voice subdued. "We were blind, Lila, willfully blind to how special you are." I took a slow sip of my latte, letting their words settle. "The damage is done," I finally said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "You can't erase those years." They both flinched, but I continued. "But acknowledging it? That matters." They proved their sincerity in small ways over the following weeks. Mom sent encouraging texts before my client presentations. Dad left care packages outside my door, always with a note saying he understood if I wasn't ready to see him. They showed up to my first gallery showing at Redline Design Studio, beaming with genuine pride as they told strangers, "That's our daughter's work." The turning point came one evening when Dad handed me an envelope, his hands slightly shaking. Inside was a letter, written in his careful architect's handwriting, something I hadn't seen since he used to leave notes in my lunchbox in elementary school. The pages contained not just apologies, but specific memories. Times he should have defended me, moments he missed, opportunities he wished he'd taken to be a better father. My apartment slowly transformed from a refuge into a home. I hung my own artwork on the walls, filled the windowsills with plants, and created a small workspace where I could sketch designs late into the night. My career at Redline was taking off. Carla had promoted me to junior designer, with my own small clients. Family dinners became a bi-weekly event, but on my terms. We met at neutral locations first, then gradually moved to home-cooked meals. My parents learned to listen, really listen, without comparing me to anyone else. They became champions of my success, rather than critics of my failures. Sophia, I heard, had moved to Seattle after Daniel left her. Sometimes I caught myself wondering if she'd found peace, if she'd learned from what happened. I hoped she had, but I no longer felt responsible for her journey. One evening, sitting on my small balcony with a cup of chamomile tea, I watched the sky paint itself in shades of pink and gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya about our weekend plans, followed by a gentle message from Mom asking if I'd like her apple pie recipe. A notification popped up from Carla praising my latest design concept. I smiled, taking in the moment. The past still existed. The kidney donation scar still stretched across my side, a permanent reminder. But it no longer defined me. I had built something beautiful from the ashes of who I used to be. I had created a life where I was valued, not for what I gave up or gave away, but simply for being myself. And there sat Lila on her tiny balcony, sipping chamomile tea and watching the sunset paint the sky. Her phone buzzing with messages, not from people who wanted to use her, but from those who truly valued her for who she was. Her friend Maya planning weekend adventures, her mom sharing family recipes, and her boss Carla praising her latest designs. You know, sometimes the bravest thing isn't giving up a kidney to save someone, it's learning to save yourself. Lila's scar might still stretch across her side, a reminder of what she gave up, but it's no longer the thing that defines her. She built something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. A life where she doesn't have to shrink herself to make others feel bigger. And Sophia? Well, she moved to Seattle after losing everything: her husband, her parents' support, and most importantly, the power she held over her sister. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about breaking free from toxic relationships, even when they're wrapped in family ties. The truth is, real strength isn't found in standing in someone else's spotlight. It's in learning to shine your own light. Lila finally found hers, not by being someone's sister, someone's daughter, or someone's savior, but by simply being herself. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to start over. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us that sometimes the most powerful endings aren't about getting revenge, they're about finding peace on your own terms.